So today we will see population systems. So these are mathematical models that try to describe what are the sizes of a population and how this population size evolves over time. And for that, you see, looks like this representation. It is just an illustration to give you an idea, but it has already the appearance of a system. So the population will be a system that receives some input and has some output. So the input will be the number of births or the birth rate, and then the output will be deaths or mortality rate. So this is new people appearing in the system. This is people disappearing from the system. It doesn't mean explicitly that it has to be death. So let's see how we can do that. Yeah, I was looking for some pictures related to population size, and I found a few of them that I found them very interesting. So they're not very much related to our topic today, that are mathematical models, but I find them very, very interesting. So this is how the population size, the human population size have evolved over years. So you see, has been an explosion in the last century. This is the same, but now explaining a little bit the reasons for each one of the changes. This is a zoom version of the previous one. This is an even more closer zoom. And again, some comments on them. You may find them interesting. You can look at them by yourself. Okay, so this is our topic actually. So our topic is how to describe how population grows over time. So, and these apply to bacteria, they apply to some plants or some animals. So what you can distinguish two kinds of growths. One is exponential growth, that is typically the one that you have in bacteria. So typically at the beginning. So at the beginning, because bacteria divide, so division means multiplying by 2 every time. So that is an exponential growth. But this cannot grow forever because you run out of resources, so you run out of food, and then typically you saturate. So there is a stable size that can be supported by a given amount of food. So this saturation is modeled by this asymptote here. So it is, for instance, this one is called a logistic growth. So at the beginning, the logistic growth starts very slowly, and then it grows very quickly, and then it saturates. And so you can, given the equation of the logistic growth, we have not seen the equation yet, but what you will do is you have some observations of how many individuals you have at particular time points, and then you will find the parameters of this curve that better represent that that behavior. So here it represents very well. Here there is a band here that is not well represented. Here you have very scarce data, so you don't know if it is a good representation or not. Okay, so yeah, so these are the mathematical models that are used to represent these population growths. So they depend on time, and they have, for instance, logistic. Logistic is the inverse of an exponential. And then you have a few parameters to control how high it is and how fast it grows and so on. And you have different models, logistic, Goldberg, Richards. You see that all of them look very similar. And you can have the analytical function, or what you can also do is to write in a differential equation. Whose solution is this one? Okay, so this differential equation, this is the derivative. So this differential equation, the solution is that one. And here we are using R as the parameter of the, so the parameters here are R and K. and here it is also R and K. So with RK and the initial value, so what is the population size at time 0, you have 3 parameters that are the ones that define the logistic solution. So, any questions about this? No? So given the points, the time points, you have to find RK, and the initial solution typically you know, but you have to look for the R and K that better fit the population size. This is if you do it through the differential equation. If you do it with the analytical function, then you have to find A, B, and C. Okay, so yeah, and there you have a paper that is that explain all these models. So a different kind of models is this one. This one can study subpopulations within a population. So let's say that you are interested in how the demographic pyramid evolves over time. So you will divide population into 3 subgroups, and then you will write an equation system like this. This is a linear equation. This is a recurrence equation. So what you are saying is the population size, this is a vector. So the population size at time n+1 will be a matrix times the population at the current time. And this model, the matrix here is modeled in this way. Okay, so what is this? So the first, so let's look at this one. This is N1. N1 is F1 times M1, F2 times N2, F3 times N3. So N1, let's say that are the young people. So the young people, they're born from each one of these subpopulations. So what is the fertility? How many new N1s appear at time N+1, given that the current size of the population at N1 is N1, so it will be a fraction, this fertility or fecundity, F1 times N1, and the same for the other two. You may set each one of these to 0, depending on whether it makes sense that they give rise to younger population or not. And then you have a survival rate. So this survival rate is N2 is S1 N1. That is, from time n to time n+1, all the S1 fraction of these ones will go to N2. Okay, so this is how the people are aging over time. And the same for S2. And then they disappear from N3. Okay. So like this, you can take a population, divide it into pieces, and then put a model on how these pieces are evolving over time, how these subpopulations are evolving over time.
Yeah, and subpopulations are in
Different age groups here.
randomly or
You choose the boundaries between the groups. And here they are, it is explained with age, but you can put here whatever criterion you want. So for instance, you can write the SIR model of epidemiology that we had last time. You can write it also in this way. So it is, so these fractions here are how many of these people go into some other subpopulation at time n+1. Okay, next. And you may have, so far we have a single population. So we have a single population here, or we have a single population, but we study the different strata of this population. But now we will have 2 interacting populations. So now we will have 2 different species, and they are competing with each other, or they interact with each other. And for instance, the interaction could be like this. So, okay, so let's see. you say the change of the population of the population one is something that depends on N1. Actually, the first part you may recognize this kind of logistic growth. Okay, so it is the logistic dependence plus something, and it is this time is minus something. So the larger the size N2, the smaller there will be a decrease of N1. So let's say that you are studying the predator-prey, or not predator-prey, because N2 is killing N1, but N1 is killing N2. So they're fighting each other. So this larger N2, the smaller N1, and the larger N1, the smaller N2. And here you have how they evolve over time for particular choices of R, K, and so on. So let's say that these are the particular parameters of this equation. And then you start with just one of those individuals, and you let the N1 and N2 evolve over time, and they would go to there. And then here what you have is a stable point. So they will not change anymore once you reach the stable point. Okay, you can take this plot. This is plotting population size over time, but you can have this phase space. So in the phase space, what you have is one of the variables and the other variable. So you have N1 and N2, and then you plot here how it evolves over time. So at time equals 0, you have 1, 1. So you're there. And then at time equal 10, that is somewhere here, you have N1 that is small and N2 that is larger. So you have N1 that is small and 2 that is larger. And then you keep on plotting, and at the end you show how it evolves over time. So you start here and you evolve to that point, and from that point on you don't evolve anymore. So that is that kind of a stable point in your phase space. And yeah, so this is again the phase space. So this is N1, this is N2. And now what we can do is we can draw these equations. So, okay, so let's say I want to find I want to find the curve that makes N1 not to change. So N1 doesn't change if all this is 0. And this has two solutions. So one is N1 equals 0. The other one is all these terms equal 0. And if you look at all these terms equal 0, this is the equation of a line. So if in your state space you reach this line is the one that makes the derivative to be 0. Okay, 0, 0 is also, so N1 equals 0 was also a stable point. But this line, if you reach one point along this line, N1 will not change. And the same happens with N2. Yes. And then you can label the rest of the space. So these lines are N1 equals 0. So it separates N1 larger than 0 from N1 smaller than 0. And the same for this line. So this line separates N2 larger than 0 and N2 larger, smaller than 0. So you can put a label to each one of the regions here. So now you can predict how, if you are in any one of these points, you can predict how it will evolve over time. So if you start here, because N1 is equal, is larger than 0 and N2 is larger than 0, you will evolve in this direction. If you start in this line, you will evolve in this direction and so on. So you can now, by saying where I am at a particular time, I can tell you in which direction I am pushed. So you can think of these, derivatives of this vector here, of this vector here, is a kind, it is not a kind of gradient, it is the gradient. Okay, so it is kind of pushing force that is pushing you in the direction given by the gradient. Okay, and this will be your stable point, this a steady state. So once you reach that point, you will not move anymore. Okay, and the shape and the shape of these curves depend on the parameters. So these lines, blue and red, depends on which are the specific R1, K1, A and B, R2, K2. So depending on which are your constants, you may cross at a line, at a point like here, or you may be almost parallel lines, or they do not cross in at least in this part of the space. They cross down here, but down here, N2 is negative. That doesn't make sense in reality. Okay, so you are constrained by this axis, so that you are pushed down. You are pushed down, but once you reach this line, you cannot go further down. So you have to go in this direction. That is the direction in which the gradient push you. So, and which is this point? This point is N1 is equal whatever, N2 is equal 0. So depending on which are the constants, one of the populations may dominate the other.
steady state?
Yeah.
It's called when gradient.
Steady state is it is not the maximum, it is a steady means fixed. So it is a state that doesn't change anymore. So once you have, it is like here. So once you converge to this point, it doesn't change anymore. So it is not maximum. Maximum N2 was maximum here. Okay. It is not maximum. It is a point that it doesn't change. And it doesn't change because this derivative is 0. And for instance, here we can see it. Here. So this point belongs to the line where the second derivative is 0, and this is the line where the first derivative is 0. So at this point, both derivatives are 0, and you don't change anymore. Okay, one of these models that have been best known is this Lotka-Volterra model. In this Lotka-Volterra, you have a predator-prey model. So it is a system. So you have two species. One is the predator of the other. So let's say that, and it is modeled in this way. Okay, so let's see. So N is the prey. So N grows by itself. And then the predator has to find the prey. And these contacts, you already know that they are modeled by the multiplication of the two. And there will be some efficiency that is B. And then predators eat the prey and it reproduces and it creates new predators. And there will be an efficiency. So how many preys you need to create a new predator to have babies? So it will be C. And that there is another efficiency laws there when you go. So part of this B is to keep you alive, and then this C is to reproduce. And then you die also. So there is a dying rate, and that will be given by D. So now here you have 4 parameters, A, B, C, D, and depending on how you choose them, typically they have this kind of behavior. So let's start here. So here you have very few predators. So if you have very few predators, then the prey can grow. But as the prey grow, there is more food, and then predators can grow too. And at some point, there are too many predators, and these too many predators start eating too much prey, so the prey will start to go down. But as they go down, there is less food, and then predators start to die, and they also go down. And at some point, there will be again very few predators, and then the prey can go up again. So at the end, these kind of systems, they have a what happens? So these kind of systems, they have cycles, and there is a phase shift between the maxima of the prey and the maxima of the predators. So here you have a simulator of that. So let's see if it works here. Here it is explaining the same thing I have. Some point. Well, I think there is no simulator. I thought there was a simulator. Okay, but what you see here are possible phase spaces. So depending on what are the parameters, you may have this kind of phase spaces, phase planes. So here you have the cycles. So here you have a number of prey, number of predators, and then you see how they evolve over time. And you have here these cycles. But it depends whether to have cycles or not, depends on the parameters. You may have some other spaces like this one. So this could also be one of these phase planes. And you may have also this one, okay, where you start cycling, and at the end you converge to some steady state. So this is an equilibrium, a fixed equilibrium. This is called a dynamic equilibrium. So when you have cycles that repeat each other, repeat over time, they are a dynamic equilibrium. Okay, so yeah, so here you have these ideas. So and which space you have, which kind of response you have depends on the parameters A, B, C, D. You can simulate this very easily. And yeah, so you may also have more complicated relationships. So here you might have, for instance, this is a mistake. This should be N2. So here you have the equation, the equations for the rate of changes. So the change rates could be, so the derivative of N1 depends in a non-linear way on N1 and on a linear way on N2. And here it is the same. So this is N2. N2 depends in a non-linear way with N1 and also non-linear with N2. Here we have N2 squared. So it is non-linear in N2 too. So and now but we have the same concepts. Which is the curve that makes this derivative to be zero? It is this one. It is this one. And now which is the curve that makes this derivative to be zero? Then it is this one. So now you have a few stable points. So you have this is a stable point because this one is N2 is equal 0. So N2 equals 0 makes this to be 0. And so these are stable points. And these are also stable points. And then here you have the representation of the gradient. So you have a representation of the gradient. This one is stable. This one here is a stable. And then you have also representations of the derivatives and so on. And let's say that you start with, so for instance, we have here only a couple of them, but you might have, in general, you can have 4 populations, let's say, and they may depend in a relatively simple way. This is non-linear, but it is relatively simple. And now you let them evolve, and this is how they behave over time. And looking from the distance, they look like random, but they are not random, they are deterministic. So there is a differential equation that if you tell me which are the initial conditions, I can tell you exactly how they will behave. And these are kind of the equivalent of these cycles that we were seeing with the predator and prey, but now they are much more complicated. You see, at some time, for instance, X3 almost disappears. And it happens relatively often. Okay, any question up to here? So, yeah, so the study of populations is also part of system biology. You can do it with organisms, you can do it with cells, you can do it with species. So, for instance, chemical species, you can do it with anything. So the idea is the same as all the time we have in the course. There is a biological system that you are interested in, and then you describe it in a mathematical way, and you analyze the properties of that mathematical system.